All right, this is the Oz report for March 29th, 2025. And let's start with having a look at our dashboard like we used to. Starting with Plex and Plex adjacent items, not really anything to write home about. Plex is up slightly, 1.5% this week, but overall, it hasn't really seen a lot of action over the last few months. Fairly steady, if not down. Trading more around the 6 million mark than the 6.5 million mark, and that's overall a fairly good sign because we had a long period of rising Plex prices, and it's good seeing that. Of course, we haven't seen a New Eden store, a massive New Eden store, in a while. Right now, instead, we have still the so-called ponytail sale going on, the 50% off Omega and MCT in the cash store, and so more people are typically taking advantage of that, which takes off some of the pressure off Plex because you have some people shifting from subbing with Plex to subbing with this fantastic deal if they do want the MCTs. And so that is one thing. Last week we saw skill injector prices rise. That didn't continue this week, but they're also not dropping. I think we will see a healthy demand for skill injectors going forward because the recent changes have been very good. So depending on how the new expansion in June or whenever it comes out hits, we are going to see increased injector demand. I do think so. However, on the other hand, we do also have historically an oversupply on injectors because from the period where skill farms were highly profitable and New Eden store sales were massive, we do have, I think, a lot of active skill farms out there that are just waiting to liquidate their skill injectors. In the last years, there's been many periods where skill farms actually had issues selling their skill injectors profitably because profits were dropping, demand wasn't as high enough, and so right now, if you look at the volume last week versus 52-week average, we see that skill injectors are trading about 10% above, which is, I think, the March 12th patch impact. So it's going to be interesting seeing that down the road. But if we're looking at the skill farming formula, we're still seeing pretty much negative $1 billion, and so nothing much has changed there on that. Skill extractors also unchanged pretty much, and hypercores unfortunately are not recovering at all. So if you're like me, if you've taken part in the big bet that was the 50% off hypercore sale a few months ago, we're waiting on those to come back, and it looks more and more like the stockpiles were so huge that this is going to just take weeks, months, and possibly years to ever recover. But you win some, you lose some, and certainly at least it's not lower than when you would buy them. So I think a lot of this prices not recovering is also people liquidating, seeing that they are not patient enough to wait this out, and I don't blame them. Let's jump into raw materials. So if you look at moon materials, they are still jumping all over the place. You see R4 moon materials overall, again, up 10% this week. The trade volume on R4 and R8 moon materials is 60% above 52-week average for moon materials and 90% for R8 moon materials. And that just shows you that they are cheap right now. They're oversupplied right now, also due to Metanox moon mining, but they're also in high demand. So overall, this is a very good sign for the economy because you're seeing production numbers up. You're seeing, especially with Morphite prices down, you're going to see some of the tier 2 production be more interesting and more in demand. And that is reflected here in the moon material trade volume. And so over R8, so R16, R32, R64 moon material, not so much. It's trading pretty much at 52-week average volume. But R4 and R8 are just heavily traded, very cheap, and that's not a bad thing, to be honest. It's not a bad thing. The big topic lately has been mineral prices. We come from a period of historically high mineral prices in EVE Online, and that's exactly what the March 12th patch was aimed at. If we're looking at what has happened, CCP Okami mentioned Noxium as being one that has been all over the place, and we covered that last week in the Oz report. That's down 27% this week. So, Noxium, I think, was more of a short-term buyout, and we'll see where that goes. But I wouldn't say it's in a terrible place per se. So it's a wait and see kind of thing. Morphite is the one that's been down a lot, right? If we look at Morphite, and I'm pulling up the long-term graph here, so going back 10 years if you're watching on the video version of this. Morphite, historically speaking, was more of a 10 to 15,000 ISK mineral pre-scarcity. Scarcity drove that thing up, drove prices up to 120k, so more than tenfold. And then after resource redistribution, quote unquote, Morphite settled in at about 40k, pretty consistently, as you can see here on the graph. We had various factors, industry recalibration, Equinox, etc., drove prices back up to 100,000, and now we're in a situation where it's dropping fairly rapidly back to that 40k range. But this does not mean that it's in a bad place. I think we can totally handle even Morphite prices below 40k. It's like the 40k line is really just an old reality, and so I don't think it's a time to panic for miners. I think right now is still a time where the market's going to shake out, and and enjoy cheaper modules, cheaper tier 2 production as we go, right? The impact of very, very cheap Morphite, or much cheaper Morphite, is going to be especially felt in modules that use a lot of Morphite, like 25,000 millimeter steel plates 2, Entosis Link 2, Capital Industrial Core 2, Capital Shield Extender 2. These all use massive amounts of Morphite, so those prices are going to come down, which in the end, a lot of these are capital modules, cheaper capital ships, cheaper tier 2 modules. Overall is something that we haven't seen in a long time, and is very much, I think, welcome right now. And hopefully it just leads to more ships being built, more ships being flown, more ships being destroyed, which in the end benefits everyone. Also, Scourge L, Conflagration L, those are ammunition types that rely heavily on Morphite and are traded a lot. So those are also going to be impacted by this quite significantly. The other minerals are not as erratic this week. So Tritanium down 6%, Maxilon, Pyrite, Isogen all up 5 to 8% this week. So the market is still shaping out. But overall, I would say, as CCP Okami writes in his 2-week update, so far so good on the March 12th update. It was specifically targeted at Morphite. It has brought the mineral price index down significantly. We're going to see that in the next monthly economic report. And, very, very good. The other thing that I want to mention is battleships, because, battleships is definitely something that was targeted by this patch as well. We saw 20 to 25% reduction in the bill of material for tier 1 battleships. And if we look at, down here at the highest trade volume items, you can see that the highest traded item versus the yearly average right now is the Raven, trading at 170% above 52-week average. And I took the time to analyze the battleship market a little bit more, and you're actually seeing massive impacts of the March 12th patch here on Battleship. So if I just rattle this down real quick, the Tempest is down 30% in price and is trading 90% above yearly average in volume. The Raven is down 25% in price and is trading at 150% yearly volume. Typhoon down 30% in price and 130% above yearly volume. And the Armageddon is down 30% in price and trading at 110% yearly volume. So I think positive reception from the community. Battleships are being built. They're being flown, they're being traded, and all of that is fantastic because it has stopped this downward spiral of, minerals are expensive, yet nobody wants to mine them because there's little production going on, little destruction going on. So we're clearly in a phase where we're seeing across the board increased production. We're seeing increased trade, which we haven't seen in a very long time. We're also seeing increased destruction, and so overall, March 12th, very, very good patch so far. Let's quickly go back to the dashboard and talk about Rogue Drone components, because Rogue Drone components, especially the drone cerebral fragments, were something that last week went through the roof. I think increased short-term demand for especially excavator drones because people are going out there mining, using oracles, etc., etc. Down significantly this week, 45%, but that's to be expected because it was just a spike last week that is now coming back down. Availability is okay. So I don't think this is a huge concern, economically speaking, but it's very interesting from a trading perspective because clearly, if you were anticipating excavators coming back at one point, which I think most traders that used to trade in excavator drones, had a stockpile out there waiting for someday for oracles to return. I was one of them. I did have blueprints and excavators from back in the day. Clearly, I can't really act on any of that now because of my NDA, but I hope some of you that aren't in that situation can have capitalized on it, because it does mean that mining is back. It means that there are more trading opportunities. It means that it's fun again to speculate on patches, and all these things from the trading perspective in EVE Online are great and exciting things. So yes, we're seeing excavators out there. Excavator drones are expensive right now, but I think that market will regulate itself. We're coming from a period of like 5 years, nobody wanting them, buying them, to one patch kickstarting that whole topic again. So it's big. Advanced protective technology is another thing I want to talk about. So that's the exploration loot from ghost sites that were also mentioned by CCP Okami in his update blog post or Discord post, whatever you want to call it. It's trading, you can see that here, at 200% above 200% above yearly average price, right? So clearly massive, and that's not even the huge problem. The huge problem is the availability that you see there of 0.8, because they're not just expensive, they're not there at all. And so that, I think, is the biggest thing to watch going forward, because that could really turn into a massive bottleneck if we are seeing the demand for capital construction, if we are seeing a lot of capitals being destroyed, and that would just really hamper the fun. And it's really good to see CCP Okami acknowledge this and saying, okay, we're watching these bottlenecks and we will intervene if need be. I'm not so much concerned about wormhole gas because there's better ways to deal with that. But this is just a hard stop on production if these materials just aren't there in the market. So we'll see. We'll keep watching that. Overall, these are massive, right? You look at that daily traded number, 144 billion. That's massive. Yeah, 144 billion is a day is massive for one component of capitals. So it's a market to watch. If you have these around, definitely, I think, a good time to sell them, because a price of 200% above yearly average is not something you see a lot. But then probably most people that have these either have sold them already to their alliance at internal prices, or have already sold them in JITA, because they are very, very hard to get. And then lastly, let's have a look at our dashboard here. You know, what's going up, what's going down. One thing that immediately is noticeable is the Icatursa. The Icatursa is up 32% this week. So very high demand for the Icatursa, also for the Vetmag. They have both seen their price go up and their availability go down this week. And that's on top of 0-point condensate and abyssal materials, and 0-point condensate and crystalline isogen. So the abyssal materials both being already very high and in low supply. This has exacerbated that problem, and so, you know, good time. We've covered it in the last weeks as well, but good time to go out and run some abyssals and get that abyssal material injected into the economy, because it needs it right now. It needs it. You know, we are seeing mining barges there. You see the Mackinac is up 14% in price, and 70% of available sell orders sold out in JITA. So clearly, mining barges, you know, a very good indicator for people going out there to mine. We're seeing drone cerebral fragments that I just mentioned. They dropped in 50% in price, so that indicated that excavator bottleneck was more of, you know, different suppliers of excavators fighting over the available drone cerebral fragments. That should shake itself out, and it should just drive people to run more drone sites and increase that supply in JITA. But it's not a huge bottleneck, because it is available. You see Megathron battleships also, you know, 60% drop in available supply. So you can see that it's not just tier 1 battleships dropping in price and being more available and being flown more, but they're just, you know, they're just massive trades going on. You can see that alliances come in and are buying up large volumes of these battleships, and that's just something that we haven't seen in a long time, and that's very, very good to see. Plex continues to be in very low availability, but the price has stabilized around 6 million ISK. And yeah, that's about it. Thanks for tuning in again. We're going to return to the regular stream, and I'll see you next week for the next Oz report. Yeah.